morning. Good morning. Good. Who's he talking to? Oh, okay. Have you introduced yourself to the person sitting right next to you that you don't know? Have you introduced yourself to someone who you don't know? Please leave this conference making new friends.
This doesn't count as part of the two that Clayton said you have to
Right.
leave. This is extra.
Know how to connect with each other, know what you're working on. Really, really important. So welcome to Silicon Harlem's ReThink Finance. And on our panel are the global thinkers and leaders in this thing called finance. I'm Sabrina Lamb, and I'm the founder and the chief executive officer of a nonprofit called World of Money. And for the last 13 years, we provide 120 classroom hours of financial education for children ages 7 to 18. I'm also the founder and the CEO of a startup fintech called Wekeza, which in Swahili means invest. So it allows non-US citizens to invest in US publicly traded companies. So I'm going to introduce all our panels. You're going to be part of this conversation because we're going to come to you early, wanting to know not only your questions, but your comments, action steps, unpacking. Let's get started. So first, to my immediate left is David Bigelow IV. And what David thinks about 24/7 is when his youngest child is going to leave the house where he lives in Westchester, goes out into the world so he can move to Harlem.
Oh, yeah.
Give him a round of applause for that.
Boom.
But professionally, he builds investment and trust relationships. Trust finance is based on trust with founders, families, and foundations for Fiduciary Trust International. He formerly served at JP Morgan Private Bank, where he worked with wealthy clients, who was JP Morgan ambassador and was on JP Morgan philanthropic grant-making committee. David was also a member of the Asset Management Division of Black Leadership Forum and was involved in the Tech for Good hackathons. He's a long-standing member and supporter of Silicon Harlem. That's really wonderful. New York Tech Meetup and the New York Tech ecosystem. He grew up in England, went to high school in Brazil, and nothing makes him happier than connecting founders with useful people in his network, and he welcomes that you follow up with him on LinkedIn. Round of applause for David Bigelow IV. So next we have Nina Nieuwoudt. Nieuwoudt. Okay.
It's a terrible last name. If any of you see the spelling, you'll know why.
We can go a couple of different directions. Is the Vice President of Product Development and Innovation at Mastercard Labs. Nina heads the enterprise security portfolio with a focus on driving identity and authentication solutions. Prior to joining Labs, Nina led the Mastercard New Consumers team to develop products and services targeting those at the base of the finance pyramid. Mastercard is doing exciting work. Please welcome Nina.
Thank you.
Dr. Leon Perlman is the founder and head of the Digital Finance Services Observatory at the Columbia Institute for Tele-Information and Columbia Business School. He currently heads the Blockchain and Infrastructure Security Work Groups for the New Financial Inclusion Global Initiative. His expertise is as a consultant and researcher extends to payments, anti-money laundering, national payment systems.
Hold your mic this way instead of towards the ceiling because it's feeding backward.
Thank you. To payments, anti-money laundering, national payment systems, de-risking, risk frameworks, He writes legislation for countries around the world in terms of how they can protect themselves for a sustainable financial ecosystem. He's consulted with the World Bank, central banks, DFS service providers, and more. Please welcome Dr. Leon Perlman. So, David, let's start with you in terms of this thing called finance and financial inclusion. We've all agreed, we've had a conversation that this is urgent, or we've dedicated our life to it. But often when we say that, sometimes people say, well, why? Why is this urgent? Why are we talking about this? You say what?
Well, financial inclusion is absolutely essential to the health of society, to the health of our communities. And so, as you've seen in the last couple of decades, there's been a broadening of the haves and have-nots, and that's destructive, I think, to the fabric of society. Everyone needs to be able to provide for themselves, and when I think of how to get there and how to get more people able to provide for themselves, I think of maybe it's not just about jobs. I think we've seen the nature of jobs change, and so the whole idea back in the day was you get a 4-year college degree and there'll be a nice cushy job waiting for you. That world is gone. But there's a tremendous amount of opportunity out there still, and if we can think about raising the next generation of entrepreneurs, I think we have a lot better shot of having greater financial inclusion.
But there's still, David, a sentiment where it's hard for people to, they'll say, yes, that's right, nod, yes, 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 but it's what prevents them from taking the next step to moving into taking action steps to their own financial security? And maybe there is this old thinking that the government is going to have some sort of safety net for them. What do you think about that?
Well, I think the government's done a pretty good job of letting people know that there's less and less of a safety net. That's just part of what we're seeing today, obviously. But I think what's stopping people? I think society still has a little bit of a tendency to say, think about jobs, as opposed to think about skills. And I think we have we all see young kids growing up. And I think schools are focused on education and focused on getting them ready for the jobs. The jobs might not be there, but they're developing skills in the schoolyard after school with friends, with family, and these skills need to be celebrated, and we need to think about how they actually translate to an entrepreneurial way of thinking.
I love that. And many, elected officials will promise this idyllic thing called jobs, never being specific on what jobs are you talking about, and where do I get those kind of skills, and is it this century's employment or jobs, or an entrepreneurship in the tech ecosystem? Why isn't there a specific conversation? Because I do believe that, from a governmental standpoint, there's a pushback in order to provide that kind of training. Because otherwise, why aren't they doing it?
Well, I think government is notoriously bad at predicting what kind of jobs are going to be out there in the future. Government is not necessarily the best set up to provide and predict the right kind of training for those kind of jobs. So it needs to be a public-private partnership to figure out what's going to be there. But also, the nature of jobs has changed, and so I do think we need to get the next generation of kids ready to be able to make money, if you will, before they have a formal job, and to have that confidence to say, I've got these skills, I've got these networks, which I'd love to talk about later, and I want to figure out how to use them to monetize those skills. Mm-hmm.
Nina, Mastercard has some exciting initiatives around this thing called financial inclusion. For you, for Mastercard, what does financial inclusion even mean? And talk about the kinds of innovation that Mastercard has distributed.
Sure. I mean, I think we go down to a much lower level. We speak about financial inclusion, we then speak about inclusion in general, which speaks to are people really connected into a society. But let's put that one side and just for a couple of minutes speak about what does the financial inclusion really mean, why is it so critical, and how big is this problem? So if you think about it, there's about 2 billion people globally that are not financially included. And let's just cut straight to the chase. Not to be banked is expensive. Cash is expensive. Okay? It really, really is expensive. It also doesn't give you any type of identity from how you behave or when somebody can help you when something goes wrong. So that is right up there. But when you get down to the practical part of it, let's think about the person who has stashed all that cash under their mattress. Let's think about the storm that comes past, whether it be rain, water, wind, and that cash is gone. It's gone forever. There's no way of actually even going back and saying, I've made a bad decision. You have been able to see that I, on average, bring in $200 a week. Can you help me to get back on my feet? All of that track record is gone with it as well. So we speak about a lot of that from the personal side. But if you think about some of the other impacts that we have, so Mastercard, and most of you probably think about us as a financial company, you'll probably go, oh, you give me a credit card, you'll probably smile at me sweetly and go, oh, can you make my balance disappear? Can you get me a higher limit? That's not what we do. Mastercard is actually a technology company. We build systems, we connect people, we do things differently. And one of the programs that we have out there where we deal with many NGOs, is what we basically call a points-based system. And this goes a lot back to how do we build those healthy economies, but also how do we make sure that we are building a sustainable tomorrow. Okay? And what do I mean by this? It's also going into the dignity of sides of things, but what do I mean by this really is we've got a program called MC8 whereby we give people points. So an NGO typically, and let's just use a hypothetical, if they were trying to get food, let's just say to Ethiopia, they would probably have corn growing in the middle of the US. They would then have to get that onto a truck or some sort of transport, get it to a harbor, it would then be put onto a ship. Let's touch wood and hope that nothing happens on the journey over, that it doesn't get wet or spoiled or anything like that. It gets over to the other side. Again, it gets loaded off onto trucks, gets moved. All of this costs a huge amount of money, just even getting it there. It then arrives in the village, and let's just say they are dispersing all of this wheat or whatever it may be, or corn that's going out there. Firstly, they're probably going to give me corn, and I'm going to look at it and go, this is not really what I need. I've got a 6-week-old baby, and I'm actually looking for baby formula. So the first thing I'm going to do is probably trade this off in some way and not get true value for it, and everybody's going to go, she's so ungrateful. It's not that I'm ungrateful, my need is very different. So I've been impacted. Let's make Leon the guy who's had a little shop in the corner. Now suddenly there's free food in the area. There's no longer a need for Leon. Leon's going to pack up his things and take his shop to the next village. Okay? 6 months down the road, when the NGO goes, this program is done or we've run out of funding, they pack up their trucks and they leave, and the whole village is actually in a worse situation than what it was previously, and a whole lot of money has gone. And I want to use the words to waste because it's covered transport costs. It's actually had more of a negative impact on the society than what it is, versus what we're going now with saying, hold on, this village may not be connected, okay? But we will go in, we'll create a partnership between the NGO as well as the small shop owner. We will give the people that need the assistance a card with points. So hypothetically, let's say we give you 20 points. Your 20 points, you could go in and you could get your bag of rice. You could go get your liter or your gallon of milk. You can go and get oil. But by the same token, if you needed baby formula, you could get that. Okay? By the same token, Leon, the shopkeeper, is now being part of that society. He's building it up and he's building a relationship. That whole ecosystem is becoming a lot more healthier. And there's a lot of those type of programs that we need to look at and going, what does inclusion really mean for everybody? It's not just the person that you and I is on the street, it's the people that are beyond that, people that are below that, people that haven't had all this existence, all the experience where these ecosystems have existed previously. So we look at that differently. We do try and find ways on how do we bring them in. And if this is somebody's first experience in using some form of digital payments, even though it be a point system or the likewise, that makes them a lot more comfortable. Much more likely that when they do get back onto their feet and they have got some money, that they will go, you know what, it worked every time. I was able to do it. I was able to keep my dignity. I've got my money in my card. I can use it as I need it and not be dictated to on what I need on somebody else's terms. So we do look at a number of those type of initiatives as well.
Great. And everyone, let's move closer to our microphone so everyone can hear you. Leon, what concerns you about all of this? What concerns you about all of this?
Could be better weather. Just to say that you might have picked up from my now speaking is that we have the same accent, so we're both from South Africa.
Okay.
So Nina's last name is pretty easy for me.
To the rest of the world, I've just become a one-name wonder. Just leave that name.
Well, what concerns you, Leon, about all of this financial inclusion,
Yeah.
bringing everybody in stuff, and what should everyone here be concerned about?
Well, there's a lot, but let me just say, I think the word financial inclusion has got many layers, you'd agree? Mm-hmm. But the way it's being utilized around the world is now digital financial inclusion. So we added a solution to the problem and conflated the terms. So the G20 and all these other bodies around the world, and Mastercard to a great degree as well in their initiatives, are doing digital solutions. Yeah. So be that it's mostly mobile-centric or a combination with cards or iris or fingerprint as an identifier. So just to put a fine point on that, so it's digital, and more so around the world because there's no infrastructure. Banks not interested in providing banks, so use everything on a mobile, pay for everything. So something that's very proximate to me and my work is in payments, and specifically in New York City, we have a large immigrant population. Agreed. Okay. So people come from elsewhere, and invariably they support themselves, but whatever's left at the end of their paycheck, they send somewhere. Okay. So unfortunately, most that frictionless ability to send money home is fast disappearing, very fast. Fast? Which one should we use? The South African says fast, we say fast. And that's because of a concept which has been around for a while, but becoming more prominent, called de-risking, which really affects immigrant communities, not just in New York City, but...
De-risking.
De-risking, okay. It's a long story short, it stops money being sent in US dollars and other currencies to another country that accepts US dollars and might swap it out for their local currency. So the Caribbean, the Pacific Island nations have been manifestly affected by this. And the reason is for money laundering concerns. There's a feeding by banks who've been slapped with fines and all sorts of sanctions for allowing money to be sent elsewhere without knowing who's receiving it. The technical legal term is what's the beneficial ownership? What's the beneficial ownership of the person receiving it? So banks that trade in US dollars, anybody that trades in US dollars needs to have essentially a New York base, right? So you're subject, even if you HSBC or some European bank, if you want to trade in US dollars, you've got to have an office here, which means you're subject to US anti-money laundering provisions. And you might get slapped. You billions of dollars in fines. So they're very risk averse. Even, let me say this, even if there's no risk, they'd rather err on the side of caution. So where this manifests in this de-risking business, how it actually manifests at a point-to-point basis, is that the banks that are trading in US dollars that got under US jurisdiction will cut off what's called their correspondent banking relationship with a bank or even central bank in a country that's perceived to be a risk.
Hold on one second. Who's here from another country or has family in another country? Shout out those countries. Germany?
No problem.
Any other countries? Anyone from the Caribbean or the continent of Africa? Colombia?
Yeah. Lebanon, okay.
Jamaica, okay.
Okay.
All right. So what do you think about those countries?
Well, there's not all, but most have been de-risked. Now, let's just say the entire country is de-risked, but the most proximate way of sending money has been de-risked. So in other words, what would happen would be a Chase Bank or Bank of America would say to whatever the bank is in Jamaica, sorry, we can't trade with you. That's not to say that everything is foreclosed, that there's no way of sending the money. But now, if you're sending $100, you instead of paying $2 on the transaction, you may be paying 15. Why? Is because you do what's called downstreaming. In other words, you send that money around the world until it lands up in Jamaica. So what do? Okay, you send it out to a European bank, to euros. They then bounce it out to somewhere else, usually, believe it or not, the Chinese currency. And then they say, well, we'll send it to Jamaica. Sorry to pick on Jamaica. And there's a cost to that. Okay. There's other ways, interesting ways, and this is one of my bugbears about regulatory coordination. A lot of federal government doesn't talk to each other. Is that there's another solution, if you will. It's more Band-Aid. It's called cash carrying. Okay, cash carrying means cash carrying. What it means, literally, is some guy or girl or whoever is going to take a briefcase and put $1 million in it and fly to Jamaica. That's the remittance corridor. Instead of sending it bank to bank, can't do that because Chase, Bank of America, is saying we're not doing bank-to-bank transfers through SWIFT. We're not doing that anymore. So find alternative means. Now, you all probably know if you filled out a customs form or something or gone to a bank, there's a $10,000 maximum limit. Okay. Beyond that, you have to declare it to FinCEN, the anti-money laundering division of the U.S. government, which got huge extraterritorial power, huge. So you can go, if you wish, to FinCEN and fill out a form and say, I'm a good actor, not going to do anything bad with the money, using it for this purposes, but on Friday afternoon, I'm catching a JetBlue flight, and I'm going to have a briefcase of $1 million in it. And usually most of the stuff happens out of Florida and Seattle. So Florida is the launch pad for remittance, cash carrying remittance corridor. Now, you now thinking, okay, I've got my FinCEN get out of jail free letter. And off you go, I'm the cash carrier, all legit. And you go to the airport in Miami, and okay, how many people would check $1 million into the baggage hold? Anybody? No, you're going to carry it. You're going to carry it through security, okay? And or strap it to you. I don't know what you're going to do.
Buy an extra seat. Yeah.
So you're going to stick it through the X-ray machine, and what's going to come up on the X-ray machine is this. It shows up. It shows up as money, and you're going to get some dude in a blue uniform saying, "Dr. Perlman, could you step aside here, please? What's this? You've got $1 million." And then he brings over Customs and Border Patrol. He says, really, what is this? And you say, well, I'm doing this, and I've got this letter from FinCEN, and...
That's him calling right now.
Yeah, that's it. give me my $1 million back. And you say, I got this get out of jail free card. I said, well, I don't know about this. And here are my rules. If I find this suspicious thingy, I need to confiscate it. And guess what? That's exactly what's been happening. The Customs and Border Patrol has, in many examples, is not being accepting of the FinCEN letters and confiscating the money, the cash-carrying money, to the degree that there are now lawsuits. Now, getting your $1 million back could be $5 million for all I know, but getting that money back, you're going to go through a long, long legal process.
You're going to pay that money to get that money back.
That's right,
yeah.
And that's what's happened. So a friend of mine is in the government in Somalia, and of course they've got that problem. They've got a huge immigrant population in Seattle. Yeah. So literally every night, he tells me, every night there's an Emirates flight to Dubai, and there's a briefcase person. Somehow in Seattle they know about it, so it's all good. It's not confiscated. And it gets flown to Dubai, and because there's no banking relationship, what they do is they buy tires in Dubai.
Oh my goodness.
The tires are shipped to Somalia.
Oh my goodness.
And that's how the money is exchanged. So the tires are sold.
I love this. I love this.
Okay, so that's de-risking. There's one more example. I was speaking to Sabrina about this. Is the Pacific Island countries are also being de-risked badly. I was chatting to the central bank governor of Samoa and Haiti last month at a conference. And there's one enterprising remittance company that has bought 2 speedboats and put machine guns on them. And going from New Zealand to Fiji and Samoa and a couple of Vanuatu and a couple of other places. And what this guy did, because it's a long distance, he bought an oil tanker and refuels the speedboats in the middle of the Pacific. You can look this guy, it's a fantastic solution.
Yeah.
So there's 2 speedboats, both for machine guns, and a couple $1 million for remittances.
So, David, when you were talking about entrepreneurship, is that what you were talking about?
Absolutely.
Speedboat.
It's exactly that.
Well, talk to us about how, we can create a speedboat money delivery system or artificial intelligence, Bitcoin, all of that, chat bots, all of that. It's so exciting. I would love for you to address that.
Well, there's some regulatory challenges, obviously, that Dr. Perlman is pointing to.
Oh, I hate that word, regulatory.
I know, it's tough.
Keeps me in business.
Keeps you in business, but also to be fair, as Andrew Raziesh was talking about, there are reasons for having regulatory environment to protect us.
Yes.
But no, I think there are all sorts of ways to move money. We do need to reduce some of the regulatory burden, but just thinking about how celebrating entrepreneurship and coaching it could be helpful. That's just one of the greatest examples that I can see. I also think that it's crucial that we celebrate networks, and obviously Silicon Harlem is a great example of a very powerful and vibrant network. I don't think necessarily that our young students understand the value of networks. And
what are networks? What does that mean?
To me, a network is getting to know other people who are in your community and outside your community, and making sure that you understand where they're coming from, what they're good at, what you're good at, sharing some of that information and introducing them to other people in your community or network. And it's what we as business people do all the time, very naturally. We may not even be realizing that we're doing it all the time, but we've all benefited so powerfully from those networks, and we nurture them. It helps us. We need to pass along that lesson to the next generation.
In the earlier session, we heard the discussion about, the 5G and what's next. All that what's next is what's now. And then I hear from certain members of certain communities where they don't trust this. They don't trust the now. They don't trust the what's next. Privacy issues. I'm not telling the people and giving my email and my phone number, where I live. And then this artificial intelligence and this innovation, they say, is taking our jobs. There will not be any bank tellers by Friday. Really, I don't, and many of us, who has walked into a bank recently? Okay, so the majority of the people have not, who does most of your banking, your financial transactions on your phone or tablet or your computer? That's where we are. So how can we remove that kratos Greek for trust, and that has to be the underbelly of any financial system? How can we remove that distrust to create entrepreneurships and understand the way we're not hiring you as a teller, but we can hire you as a coder to create the next chat bot that companies can buy your service?
Well, it's absolutely true. There's going to be a ton of job destruction and hopefully job creation going forward. The world is going to look different. The human-to-human interaction is crucial in a civil society and having a thriving society. And so I think we always have to keep that in mind as we're designing technological solutions to different projects and different businesses. So you want to have that involvement. And then further, I think as we're talking to that generation of people who are going to learn coding and be coders, I also want to make sure that we're also coaching them to realize that it's not just about coding, because AI could take that out of their hands in the future. But to understand what it means to be a coder, what it means to manage coders, what it means to scope out a project, and how you would use coders or coding technology in the future, and then think about how you could maybe create a business plan out of that project. So you're not just there coding, but thinking more broadly and entrepreneurially.
Well, what do you say to maybe some of our our fellow friends here? And I don't want to be a coder. I want to be in this technology, and this is to anyone. I don't want to be part of, or I feel intimidated about being part of that. What are your concerns about those who are reluctant to participate in where we are now?
Well, that's a good point. And I think what we're talking about here are banks, right? Banks are going to take over, and all that technology is going to, or banks are taking over, and all that technology, we're subservient to them. The good news is that banks are, to a large extent, going to lose their monopoly. They have to a great degree in Europe with some legislation here. But I'm very optimistic. I think there's plenty of opportunity for entrepreneurs who are not just going to be coders. They're going to be owners, not coders. They're going to be able to run their own financial institutions. If it happens. Now, there's a federal agency you might or might not heard of. It's OCC, Office of the Controller of the Currency. Old one, US dollar stuff. But what they're planning is a fintech charter, which essentially will give entrepreneurs and fintechs the opportunity to play on a level playing field, much like is being done in Europe with the payment institutions.
Have they issued that already?
No, I wasn't get to.
Okay.
I was get to. This is where slight frustration, is that it's a federal agency. Remember, federal. Okay, so federal, and then you've got these little things called states.
Sure.
50 of them. Right? Okay, so OCC has said we want. They're called neobanks. They're not banks. They're more transaction facilities, but they're neobanks. That's a new term we have put around the world. So we want the Nina Bank. All right, we want the Nina Bank.
Sabrina Bank.
The Sabrina Bank. Sorry, I was getting. I was going down. I really was going down the line. So this is.
We could join. The part is there.
So this has been proposed, the fintech charter, literally, and the first companies will probably get this are what we call the tech funds, not the fintechs. The tech companies like Google and Apple who will become banks. Banks in our thing, okay? Because they got the wherewithal. But that isn't the purpose of it. The purpose is just to allow entrepreneurs who've got a great idea, right? Coders to owners, okay? To be able to do this. Big problem is the states are pushing back on this. All the states, the attorney generals have sued the OCC to stop this.
My goodness.
Because it's our right to control whatever financial services are provided in our state. OCC hasn't. That's what they're saying. So there's been these lawsuits. I think it was decided in the favor of the OCC. I'm not sure. I need to check up. Just a few weeks ago, there was a decision. But there is this fight, so that's why it isn't here yet. But that's the plan.
I would love to know more about that,
Sure.
as you're aware of that. Coming to you for questions or comments in 3 minutes. What entrepreneur initiatives are you excited about that you've seen, someone creating some sort of entrepreneurship based upon technology that you would like to share with everyone? Someone that you know or you don't know, new companies that they created out of nothing.
Great. Oh my gosh, there's so many. Let me think about that for a second.
So many is good.
Just go ahead. Yeah.
I'll go with so many.
What would you?
Sabrina, sorry, could I go back to your previous question? I just want to add a bit of color there, and based off Leon's comment as well. So, When I was back in South Africa, I did a huge program where we basically issued 22 million people with digital access. Okay? The irony of that behind it, the bank behind it actually didn't have any network. They did not have a single branch, and the entire staff of that bank could probably have sat in the side of the theatre here today, and that would have been it. And there was a lot of people that pushed against it and said, this is never going to work, these people have got nowhere to go to. And again, it touches on that point that people don't really want to go into a traditional bank because we don't feel comfortable. The carpets are this thick, you sink away, the person's asking you questions using terminology that you don't know, therefore people don't want to use it. And what we actually relied on to make that program successful and still get the banking side of it was use retailers. And when the people were using that, they were using it to do their balance inquiries, to do their deposits, to do withdrawals and all the rest of it. And they said part of the reason why they felt comfortable was the person working there was somebody that they knew, more than likely from their local neighborhood, and they could go, what are you saying? And they could go, no, this is a better way to do it, and they go, it's that trust. And I think a lot of the ways that technology is coming in, where people will be left behind, it's not because technology has overtaken them, but they just haven't understood their customers right in a lot of times, and they have not kept up. Okay? And I think there's this whole personal thing where we are no longer all wearing suits every single day. There's a different way of interacting. We want to interact with mobiles. We don't want to be forced to do our banking between 9 and 3. We want to be at home at 10 o'clock at night and buy the pair of school shoes we forgot to buy, or order the project stuff that you know you're not going to get to before the weekend. Like, it's all of those type of things. And I think that's where the entrepreneur spark comes in. How are you making somebody else's life easier, and how are you actually being that connection? It's not that we're losing a connection. People are actually wanting a more intimate connection with people who think and feel like them.
Really important.
Sorry.
Please, great. That was great. Go down, from everyone that were coming to you, what do you want everyone in this room to do now, right now? What action step can they take, as opposed to we're just listening, oh, those are good points, I don't agree, I disagree. What do you want everyone in this room to do for their own empowerment right now?
Well, depends who you are, of course. That's the lawyer answer. Let me put on my cybersecurity hat for a moment. Okay, and I'd say that if you're using an old phone, you might be liable for malware and hacking. And you could lose your funds that way.
Liable or exposed?
Exposed.
Okay.
I mean, wrong word. Thanks for correcting me. Exposed.
Sure.
We've done, in conjunction with some colleagues in the computer science department in Florida, a assessment on a whole lot of mobile banking apps and general apps. They're all leaky. If you've got an old phone, the operating system might not have those patches anymore.
What's old?
Don't
tell me 6 months. What's old?
Android 5, anything Android 5.
And 5, okay.
Gotcha. Most of the phones are Android. So Android 5.
What about an iOS system?
That's more secure, but not totally impenetrable.
Okay.
But less, because problem is that Android is an open system. Right? So there's no curation done to the degree that Apple do for their apps. Okay, so it's basically you stick an app on there and hey presto, off we go. Those apps are leaky. They are leaking information.
So don't get a better phone. Get a newer phone.
Or
over 5.
Or if your phone has the capability, press the update button.
Okay.
If not, there are very cheap phones out there with the latest operating systems. You can go to Amazon and buy one. Pretty good phone for under $200. You really don't need to spend a lot of money to get the same functionality. But
and to protect yourself.
Yeah, and to do that stuff. There's stuff you download any app. It's going to have some. You don't know if it's an anonymous author.
Right.
You don't know. Okay. Apple check. Google don't.
Gotcha.
So you just don't know what's in there.
Nina, David, and then we're coming to you. What do you want everyone in this room to do now? Right now, it's urgent. Hurry up, do it now.
My challenge to you would be become digital. When people are asking you to pay them in cash, say to them, how can I pay you electronically? Our schools are still, a lot of them are very paper-based, asking for cash. The question is, how efficient is that for the teacher that's collecting all the $2 or 50 cents or whatever? How much of that leaks out? Let's become digital. Being digital gives us a fully transparent and audible trail. It also makes all of our lives easier. Embrace it. Embrace your friends. Embrace your children to do that. If you've got kids, help them open the savings account. Show them how their savings accounts are growing. If you've got somebody that helps you in any way or form and you've been paying them in cash, move to a digital form of paying them. There are huge amounts of apps out there. Get one that works for you. Make it happen. Every time somebody's got money digitally and they start saving a little bit, it means they're preparing for a better future tomorrow.
And stop using checks.
Oh, yeah. David, what do you want them to do right now?
All right, well, they can always switch to Apple, of course, and that's all Leon's problem. No, I would say be an entrepreneurial coach, be an entrepreneurial evangelist. So when you go home and you have kids at home, think about dealing with them in a sense of, when they say, oh, this stinks, or this is, I tried to do this and it didn't work. Ask them for a solution. If they're spending all their time gaming, ask them how they can improve the game, and is there a way to think about turning that into a business? Could they think like a consultant? There's so many things that we all do at home with our interactions where we're thinking about things that maybe don't work or could be improved. We'll turn that into a mini business plan and have that be a discussion at home.
And I would say download the World of Money app. It's complimentary, World of Money, on either the iOS or Google. You'll have 60 videos teaching you different subjects in financial education. 4 of the videos are in French, Spanish, Swahili, and Portuguese. Okay, questions? Yes,
Oh my
sir.
God.
No, right here with the glasses, right here? Okay.
Hi, I'm Heidi
Oh, sorry.
Brown. How are you? It's
I don't
okay.
have my glasses on.
David, como vai?
Tudo bem, tudo bem.
Muito bem. I went to a escola americana in Rio.
A scholar, graduado, foi graded no São Paulo.
Oh, okay. All right. We have to talk
we
later.
leave
I'm
now?
speaking
Yes,
Portuguese, everyone. Sorry.
We're going to
Very
turn it off the
quickly. Very quickly. Sorry, speaking Portuguese. So, I appreciate all of what everyone has shared on the panel. And since we are here in Harlem talking about Silicon Harlem and networking and relationships and the like, and this is a panel about finance, I was hoping to hear more about financial literacy as it relates to the digital experience and what each one of your organizations are doing to outreach to underserved communities, teaching our young people about financial literacy and how they can leverage technology.
That's what
specifically, I know Nina had talked about the global experience, but in terms of those points, how is that happening within the Harlem community? How is that happening in other underserved communities?
World of Money has been in existence. Worldofmoney.org has been in existence for 13 years. We provide 120 immersive classroom hours of financial education for children ages 7 to 18. And I just shared with you about our digital youth financial education mobile app. And the power of it, it's the videos are taught by children for their peers. Okay? Yes, sir. Okay.
We've got, sorry, do you want to ask we've got a number of programs as well, and we've got like Girls for Tech, where we bring people in, teaching them not specifically about financial curriculum, but also what does coding look like, what does all the terminology mean. We partner with a lot of people. We've also got Your Money Smarter programs, so we've got a number of initiatives going as well.
Good morning. A two-part question. The first question is getting back to some of your stories here. From a regulatory standpoint, doesn't the government look the other way when you transfer large sums of money for numismatic purposes? I mean, if I'm carrying a briefcase with $1 million and it's just in regular $100 bills, what I tell them is 1928 gold currency, in the same denomination, they look the other way. And secondly, also looking what some of the comments that you made, what's the most advanced bank that we can actually do worldwide transactions with? I mean, I do HSBC. Because you put your $1,000 here in Harlem, I go to France, I take it out, I still have my 1,000 in euros, whatever the equivalency is, with minimum transaction fees. What's the best bank we can actually start doing business with?
Bank or company? So that's a good question. I'm not gonna put an input here on any particular bank. So let me just talk about alternatives, rather. And one of those is something called Ripple, which anybody heard of Ripple? Okay, there's a few people. It's a crypto asset company that's got a lot of traction. And what it's doing is international transfers in almost, I wouldn't say in opposition to, but maybe as a competitor to something called SWIFT. SWIFT is where all your money goes through. It's based in, was it Brussels, right? Yeah, Brussels. Society for Worldwide Transfer, Fund Transfer, that's right. So that has the same constrictions, and they've got their own AML concerns. So a parallel system is being built by Ripple through using their crypto asset, a stable crypto asset called XRP. And they've got a lot of traction around the world. Essentially, what that allows is small currency pairings. So if you want to send the money to the Seychelles, right, it's very difficult. If you want to go on a holiday to the Seychelles, beautiful place. Okay, you go to Expedia, and you book a hotel room for $100. The money's got to get to the hotel room in Seychelles somehow, right? Very difficult for Seychelles to get the money, or anybody wanting to do a remittance to the Seychelles or any other place where they are not. There's no high volume trading. It becomes expensive to send money to certain countries. Right. Okay, France, easy peasy, SWIFT, no problem. Okay, Seychelles, Jamaica. Anywhere, virtually anywhere where there's not a US denominated currency, it's more difficult and more expensive. So what XRP aims to do is, instead of pivoting around the US dollar, Ripple aims to do, they pivot around XRP. So you'll have a pool, countries will have a pool, banks will have a pool of XRP which they trade around. And then that gets converted into their local currency. So it's not a bank, it's a new currency trading system.
It's
If it was the other way with regulatory way, it stays numismatic, right? So this seems like plastic currency, digital chip currency.
Well, yes and no. Let me know how the gold bars to the X-ray machine works for you.
Yeah, the panel will be available after we wrap.
Cryptocurrency and blockchain has been the most impactful and disruptive force in fintech lately. So I was hoping to hear more from you guys about that, about how that shifts how we handle value, how it's shifting how companies raise funds. As you talked about, it's shifting how people transfer value from country to country, and just also about the impact of decentralized systems versus centralized systems.
Okay, that's a very broad question, but I'll use this as
And we have 30 seconds.
30
about
seconds.
30 to
Exhibit
45
A would be
seconds.
Ripple, okay? But just to say that blockchain, which it's more distributed ledger technologies. That's the more technical term that we use, which blockchain is one example. Ripple is another example of a distributed ledger technology. But this stuff has been, from what I can see, and I spoke on a panel yesterday about this, and I'll repeat my remarks very quickly, is that at an enterprise, a lot of this stuff is TBD. A lot of money being put in, some is sort of right out of the box, ready to go. So it's blockchain as a service, ready to go. But for stuff which I call last finger, this is not rude, but for people in this room, blockchain, last finger where you're using it on your phone, not happening anytime soon. Back-end processes, enterprise level systems, settlement, ID, whatever, trade finance, that's happening. So depending what time, who you speak to, people will say blockchain is complete hype. And then on the other hand, you'll get the practitioners say, like IBM, we've got a trade finance system going.
A lot of people said the internet was hype too.
Yeah.
Final question, and then we must conclude.
Since we don't have any time left, I just would like to say that Harlem, we have a large percentage of people who are unbanked. So we need to find solutions to bring them on board. And also individuals who seek payday loans, who are being taken advantage of and go to check cashing places. So I don't know whether or not that's you're focusing on that in your research over at Columbia University, but I think that that would be great. Same thing with Mastercard, in addition to lowering interest rates.
That's why it's really important as we conclude. Financial education is the first step before we go anywhere in terms of blockchain or cryptocurrency. We have to educate ourselves once we're in the room. And on the World of Money app, it is a free app, has specific 3-minute video on the vultures that specifically target underserved communities. Please watch it and then take the quiz afterwards. Thank you so much for coming.
Nicely done.